It is 9:02, and I think it's about time to get this meeting underway. Is everybody on the right wing ready?
Yes.
Everybody on the left wing ready? Yes, sir. To lead our invocation this morning, I'm going to ask our city manager, Daniel Valenzuela, and then I'll ask Johnny Silva, if he will, to lead us in the pledge. Boss, you're on.
Okay. Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, it's with humble hearts that we approach you and give you thanks and praise for the wondrous blessings in our lives. Father, we ask for your wisdom to guide us today as we make decisions that will impact the lives of our citizens. We love you, Lord, and all these things we pray in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
To the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And we have no public comment today. Is that the way this agenda is written, Ms. Ramirez?
Yes, sir.
I think we could have public comment if anyone wants to comment, couldn't we? Council, do you agree?
Yes.
This is the time then that we have public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would wish to comment on anything that is not on the agenda, if there's anything you want to talk about or bring to the attention of the city council, then we will have the authority to put it on a later agenda for discussion if it's something that we do. So, and this is also the time for the city council if they have any comment at all to make on anything that is not on the agenda. So I will ask the public first. Is there any public comment that anyone would care to make at this time? If not, I will ask if there's any comments or any statements from the council at this time dealing with anything that is not on the agenda. All right, let's move on to our regular agenda. Regular agenda number 1 is a consideration of approving an amendment to vision plan component of the San Angelo Comprehensive Plan update adopted in 2009, specifically properties located within an approximately 1,800-foot radius of the intersection of Armstrong Street and 28th Street in north central San Angelo. Our interim senior planner, Jeff Hines. You're on, buddy.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thanks for being here today. Looking at the agenda, I didn't know it'd be so popular. Notification is not required for this request. Feel free to stop me at any time during the presentation. I'll go ahead and elaborate further. This is the current vision map excerpt of the area at this time. The brown area, the outline here, indicates the study area that planning staff had undertaken back a couple months ago. The pink on here is neighborhood center, which is intended for higher density residential opportunities or lighter commercial opportunities. The red is commercial, intended for more intensive commercial opportunities, and the predominant color you see here is yellow. That is neighborhood. The sliver of green in the corner here is for open space or parks. In terms of what the council has the opportunity to do today, you may approve this as presented, remand it back to the Planning Commission for further discussion, deny the property or deny the amendment on a property by property basis or in whole, or make changes that you deem necessary and then approve the request. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we did a field survey of the area. We went out and observed what was going on there lot by lot to observe current land use patterns in this area, discussed with our engineering department, stormwater, water utilities, and MPO, and then entered data and discussed as a team what would be the best in terms of the next 25 to 50 years for this area. We researched using aerial photos past zoning history of the area and examined the current vision plan map for strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and then proposed an amendment that was reached based upon the data and findings as a result. Staff does recommend approving this, and on August 19th, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this amendment 5-0. We were directed to examine this area in May of 2013. There was a request from a property owner in the area, Mr. Art de la Pena, to go ahead and examine this area and bring that to the Planning Commission at their request. We did take a look at it. 95% of the parcels and 88% of the land area were actually residential at this time. Some notable commercial uses in there include KSAN and KLST, the news stations, TxDOT, Municipal Water District Office, and currently under construction at this time is a Vision Oil Tools warehouse and office. This is just a land use map of the area based upon our field observations. The orange is a non-neighborhood serving commercial. I can explain more about that. The blue is our higher density residential. The darker green is vacant residential properties, and the lighter green is lower density residential properties, and the kind of aqua color is a neighborhood serving commercial enterprise. So we did pull some census data of this area to get an idea for who lived there, some demographic information. 283 people live there at this time. With a little caveat there was some of the area. The census tract, that's I believe Mr. Vardaman's district, does extend all the way to the area that was recently annexed, so that was not included to get a little bit better data for this area. And with that, that was all in the background report as well. So just looking into the future, adults in this area are going to reach retirement age in the coming 10 to 20 years. With any luck, their children will leave the home, and as such, they may have more disposable income, more opportunities may present themselves in the future for folks to do commercial opportunities as well. Alternative living options may become necessary as well. This area isn't really zoned for that at this time, but over the next 25 to 50 years, it could potentially at the discretion of Planning Commission and Council. With that, though, this is the amendment that staff and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of. And if there's any questions with that, I'll be happy to try and address those for you at this time.
Well, I'm getting a lot of calls from the neighborhood, and they do not want any more commercial activity in this area. So how would this thought line up with your vision plan?
Sure. We did have at the last Planning Commission meeting here a couple weeks ago, there were a couple people that did seek zone changes based upon this vision plan amendment. They were both denied. The Planning Commission didn't feel that this was the proper time to really go commercial. The vision plan is a 25 to 50 year goal, so they may have kind of rushed a little bit. Ultimately, though, it's this council and your future council's calls as to when commercial is going to be introduced into the area. This would legalize commercial. State law does state that it's under the local government code if you've got a comprehensive plan that you zone in accordance with it. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to zone it, but if they were to do that, this would be what it would be based upon.
So I guess my question is, if we want to deny any more commercial activity in this area, we must deny this comprehensive plan?
You could.
Is that the way I'm understanding it, or do we need to accept the plan?
If you think this is a good goal for the next 25 to 50 years for this area, you could accept that, or if you think it needs to be, what the current plan is for the next 25 to 50 years, you could deny this, and that would take care of it.
I'm not understanding. I don't want any more commercial activity in this area. So do I need to make a motion to deny this new plan, or do I need to move that we accept this plan that you're introducing?
In terms of
clear answer is what he needs.
Yes or no? Do I need to move to deny or to accept this plan if I want no more commercial activity in this area?
You would want to deny this and keep the current vision plan, which is calls for much less commercial than what is in place now and mostly neighborhood.
Don, is this in your area?
No, it's in mine.
It's in yours. Marty, would you take over then, please, sir?
Yes. I think that may slowly turn commercial, down the road. I think we may be about 15, 20 years ahead of ourselves, in my opinion. I've received a lot of phone calls on it. I guess my other question is, it's what, 1,800 feet around 28th Street or something?
Yeah, that was just our rough general study area.
Doesn't that border on spot zoning?
You're not actually zoning any property with this one. It's just whenever future decisions are made, they're based upon this. So if someone comes forward, like say they lived on, you see where the mouse is here. If they lived here and said, I want to get commercial, legally we'd have to say no. The future vision for that area is calling for neighborhood. So you're not actually zoning anything with this amendment today. You're kind of opening the door for the next 25 to 50 years for what those decisions will be based upon.
Okay. I would rather look at it from 25 to 50 and not 0 to 25. So I move we deny, or I move we keep the current vision plan.
Okay.
And I will second that. And I might also add that there's a school crossing just right down on 23rd with a and the commercial activity is already in this area. And we don't need any more trucks. We don't need any more commercial activity in the school zone around Bradford School. So I'll second your motion, Marty. Do we have any other further council discussion? Mr. Silvers?
I have a quick question, Jeff or Dwayne or Marty. Where does 28th Street run east? I mean, what's out there? I don't remember.
When it goes east, it goes through there's some residential area and there's some commercial areas, kind of a mixture of both, and then it dead ends into Pacifico or?
Yeah, and there's a
there's a
projection
dead
of 28th that would one day cross over and link up to Old Ballinger Highway, but it's not in place at this time. But there's a lot of undeveloped property at this time. There's a lot of opportunities out there still for development.
Yes, sir.
So that's right north of, excuse me, right north of KLST?
East.
Yeah, it's right beside, yes.
Okay.
just
KLST is kind of where street is on the
Yeah, it's
map
right
here.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might also add that they're moving a lot of sand through that railroad yard, and the big trucks are there picking up sand. So we've already got a tremendous amount of commercial activity and truck activity on this, and people don't want any more. Any further council comments on this? Questions? Do we have any comments from the public? The motion has been made that we deny this plan and that we keep the current plan that we have that will keep commercial activity to a minimum. We need to take a vote on this at this time. All of those that are in favor of
Public
denying.
comment? Public comment?
I did ask.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
It is
Pub-
now, it's still 9:05, and it's time to bring this meeting to order.
What?
Is everybody on the left wing ready to go here this morning?
Hello, one moment. Okay, sorry about that. Don't know what I did.
We're repeating history here. That was last week.
Okay, we're good now. Sorry.
All right, the motion has been made that we deny this request and that we keep commercial activity in this area to a minimum. I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have six to deny. We have 1 in opposition. So it's a 6-1 vote. This carries. All right, let's move on to the next one. Consideration of approving an amendment to vision plan component of the San Angelo Comprehensive Plan update adopted in 2009, specifically properties located south.
I'm
sorry.
It's still not.
I don't know what this is doing.
It is now.
Oh, that's on. We're clicking those
Yeah, what-
items. I just
they're going through- they're
I
going-
got the same thing, but I
Okay.
don't have my volume on.
I guess,
That old boy is adamant
turn it down.
about telling
Yeah,
the
you
time
are.
and getting the meeting started, isn't he?
well, it's the next
It's-
item on our deal.
It's the link.
It's the link. It's
Yeah, the link is going straight to the,
It's all Nathan's fault.
yeah, that's what. yeah, what you
Nathan
mean.
turned me off. Consideration approving an amendment to the vision plan component of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan in 09. Properties located south from the intersection of Grand Canal Road, US Highway 277, south of the city limit line. Properties located just east of the city limit line, but outside the city limits in southern San Angelo. Mr. Jeff Hines.
All right, this one, some of you this will be familiar to. It was at council back in May of this year, I believe, perhaps June, I think May though. This is what the original vision plan had originally called for in that area. It was amended slightly, and I'll show you that to what it is today. Same options as last time, so I'll skip through these. The process was also eerily similar. We did skip the census data as a result of the recent development of that neighborhood in the area. There would be no census data for when it was collected and when those homes had developed. Planning staff does recommend approval of this amendment, as well as the Planning Commission at the July 15th meeting by a vote of 6-0. If you remember back to the previous meeting, there was a project here which is currently under construction for a warehouse for some industrial service activities. The vision plan was changed just in this area. The rest of it was remanded back to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission had directed staff to go ahead and come up with some sort of a compromise, and I'll show you that here shortly. This is the original configuration, which was remanded back to the Planning Commission at that May meeting for further discussion at that time. Here's just a thoroughfare plan map of the area and our basis for the recommendation. There's a lot of opportunities for industrialized uses to be directly next to neighborhoods with only a privacy fence as a buffer with really no land use buffers. The land uses are somewhat at opposite ends of the spectrum. We've got neighborhoods which are pretty low density and industrial, which is at the high end on top of the pyramid. This proposal, this kind of compromise that Planning Commission had us reach, would buffer and diversify the area and create nodes of activities. So I'll go forward to that. This is the current zoning map of the area, which is a little bit different than what the comprehensive plan is. This is what the area is actually zoned at this time. The darker red on here is heavy commercial. The lighter blue is our industrial, and then the pink color is our neighborhood business or neighborhood commercial. And this kind of, it looks like white on here, but it's actually a shade of yellow is residential. And then this is a 0 lot line home designation up in this area. So this is what the kind of compromise that Planning Commission had forwarded to you with the recommendation of 6-0 from the first amendment. It would, instead of having industrial allowed right next to neighborhood, allow for some commercial activities, which is what most of the area is zoned for at this time. It left this area the same as a hub of industrial activity, buffered from the neighborhood by transitional areas and some commercial properties as well. The green on here would be open space. The Grand Canal is likely never going to develop as anything, given that it's a drainage canal, so just preserving that as open space is what this would do, as well as protect the future neighborhood growth here. This area is all developed at this time with the exception of, I think, lot 16K here. There's a pile that you can see of materials that this business has here. Might be a reason for why it's not developed, but the rest of the lots at this time are developed as residences, and this would further just protect them going into the future for the next 25 to 50 years. Folks would not have to come in for a zone change. There's a lot of the properties here that are, this one in particular is Dan Hill Containers, and I'd spoken with the guy that runs that factory as well, and given him just a little bit of information a few months ago about this. But essentially, if folks don't come in for a zone change, they'd be able to have a use that's much more intensive than what this vision plan would call for. This vision plan really is a 25 to 50 year goal for how the area, if it were to redevelop, as these uses may or may not last forever, as this area would redevelop, what that guide would be for this council and the Planning Commission. And if there's any questions, I can try to address those.
Yeah.
Is this yours, Roger?
This is mine.
Then-
And actually, I live really close to this. I'm not for this. The roads, especially going back down there on Fieldstone and back up in there where Dan Hill, the container manufacturer is, are already in really bad disrepair. Those trucks go in there all times of night and day right now. The two red lots that you, right there in the middle that are rectangular, those two are right now, that's vacant land, and that backs up to the neighborhood that I live in. I don't think that we need any more commercial going down there. The road that's right there in front of it between the two Browns, that's a road that's going down. Go down a little bit, just a little bit right there. That's a road right there.
Yes.
That road is in really bad disrepair, and you've got a lot of commercial traffic that's driving up and down that road already. Again, like Dwayne was on the last one, I don't think that we need any more. We don't need to expedite this on taking it to the next level. I would prefer to see residential in those two big giant rectangular areas there in the future. I don't want to make it easy on more commercial use back up in there.
Is that Templin Road?
That is Templin.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
it
what I
is.
thought.
And Fieldstone and Cornerstone run back up off that there are neighborhoods there. So the areas that we're talking about are almost surrounded by residential areas.
I'm familiar with
And, we had to redo Grand Canal because the road was tore up so bad. And the road was tore up so bad because of the heavy 18-wheeler use that's going up and down that road that's right there, going to that box plant.
Okay, so your motion then is to deny approving the amendment to the vision plan.
And keep it the way, what is it now?
This is what it is right now. It's actually calling for industrial development.
Yes, I
there.
don't, okay, well, I don't want industrial.
So the
I
original.
don't want commercial either.
Sure. The original one that was remanded back to the Planning Commission had those two tracks identified as a neighborhood center, which would be for lighter intensity commercial or higher density residential. One of the Planning Commission members had remarked this might be a good spot for some townhomes or infill development of that nature. Alternatively, if you'd like to make a change, you could have us code this as neighborhood and send it forward with that if that's what your goal is.
Question.
Yeah, I don't want it to go, I don't like either thing that you brought forward to us. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't want to vote for either one of those things. I would like to actually ask that it go back to the Planning Commission and work on changing. I would like to see it either residential or duplexes could possibly go in there, like you were saying, the patio homes or something like that. I think would be a good fit that would be up in there. I don't think you'd do patio homes there, though, because of the amount of land, they'd have really big yards the way that it would be so deep.
Right.
Okay, did you want to make a motion on this? Did you want to move either way on this, or you
I-
want to move to remand it back?
Actually, I want it to go back and more discussion to take place. I think more neighborhood involvement needs to get involved, come in and come forward on that and voice their opinion on it. I know that, when we let the first top brown one there, that one changed. They're actually building the warehouse in that gray part. And the
Yes.
brown is going to remain, I believe it's going to remain a buffer zone.
Yeah, it's zoned for office warehouse now, and they had come forward and indicated to us that their plan was to do self-service warehouse units there.
Right.
Office warehouse allows for several other things as well, but that's what they had indicated to us
Mhm.
at this time.
And I think that was a good buffer there because not very many people are going to go in and out of there, and they're for sure not going to be a giant 18-wheeler truck or heavy commercial trucks going to that part. The other part there is going to have traffic coming in and out because they have to cross that
Correct.
to get to the property.
So your motion is to remand this back to
Yes.
plumbing,
Yes.
to planning? I'll
I
second
don't want to take
that.
any motion on or any action on it.
Just remand it back. Do we need to make a motion to remand this back, or can we just say remand it back?
Please do a motion, if you
Okay.
would.
Well, if you want to make it in the form of a motion, I'll second.
I move that we remand this back and we have more discussion on the possible uses of this land that we're talking about.
Okay, I'll second. Charlotte, you, and then Marty.
My question being, the commercial and industry has been there for quite some time. It's the residential that has slowly migrated out to there. And the other question that I had, this happened back in July, and did we have notices posted for people to know that we were going to be considering it again, since this was back in July?
It's just on the agendas for Planning Commission and Council. State law doesn't require any notification for the comprehensive plan update.
That's all I want to know.
Marty?
Never mind.
Johnny?
The only question I have is, and I'm okay with Rodney's motion. I'm lost on the Grand Canal Road. The strip going up, straight up and down, what is that?
This here?
No, the other. The up and down. The green,
Oh, this?
That's the
up.
Oh, over here?
No.
The vertical, green,
Oh,
on
here.
the left.
that's the golf course.
Yeah, that's the golf course there,
Okay.
sorry.
That's the golf course.
What?
Yeah,
I
that's
knew
the
it
part
was
of the
there,
golf
but I'm
course.
thinking canal. I was thinking Grand Canal. I don't see it going up that way, but okay.
Do we have any further council discussion on this? I'll call for public comment on this item if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this. If not, motion has been made to remand this back to the Planning Commission for adjustment and to get rid of the commercial activities, and it has been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? 7-0 on that, Ms. Ramirez. Number 3, first public hearing and consideration of introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 12 pertaining to mobile home regulations of the Code of Ordinances, City of San Angelo, an ordinance amending Chapter 12 Planning and Development, Article 12-500 Mobile Home Regulations of San Angelo City Code of Ordinances by amending the title of Article 12-500 to read Manufactured Home and Mobile Home Regulations, restating Section 12-503 skirting by adding manufactured homes and providing an exception for licensed dealerships and retailers, amending Section 12-504 temporary mobile home installation by amending the section title to temporary manufactured home, mobile home, or building installation, and restating subparagraphs A and C of said section to reference manufactured home, providing for severability, providing for penalty, and providing for an effective date. Brother Hines.
Good morning. This is the last time you'll hear from me today. You may smile or frown upon that, depending upon how it's gone. But at a previous meeting, council had directed staff to kind of come back, not this council, but the previous council had directed staff to kind of look at ordinances that are in play in the community and look at ones that may be overbearing or not necessary, that may cause kind of an undue hardship on businesses. This is kind of an update and that kind of assignment and directive from council. Currently, skirting is required for any mobile or manufactured home, regardless of if it's being lived in or for sale. We found that this, if it's going to be for sale, skirting it may be a little bit unnecessary, given that it's at a dealership. It's not in a neighborhood or next to a neighborhood generally. This has arisen a couple times in the last couple of years for folks coming in and asking about, I'm looking to sell this. Do I really need to have this skirted to be for sale? So as a result, we kind of sent this to legal, and it was discussed at the Planning Commission as well back in 2011. In terms of the options for the council, you may approve this, modify and approve it, or deny this amendment. We are recommending approving this amendment, and this is essentially what skirting is. If it's in a neighborhood, it would mobile or manufactured home would look something like this with a nice skirting on the bottom, or if it was just going to be at a dealership and not in a neighborhood, skirting would not be required. This amendment would simply, if it was for sale, not require the skirting at all, and the rest would stay the same. The ordinance also updates and adds the term manufactured. The original ordinance has actually been on the books since 1959, and at 1959 there was no such thing as a manufactured home. That didn't come into play until about 1976. So with that, mobile home dealerships are classified as a wholesale trade, which are not allowed generally in zoning districts we would recommend next to a neighborhood or in neighborhood zoning districts. It's not eligible in our neighborhood commercial or office commercial zoning districts in any circumstance. And even in general commercial, the sales of mobile homes or manufactured homes are only allowed with the conditional use from the Planning Commission. So this is really a land use for, in terms of the sales, that's only going to occur in an industrialized area, being heavy commercial, office, warehouse, or the CGCH zoning in the manufacturing district. So aesthetics are much less of an issue. I'll try to answer any questions if you have any.
Who wants to weigh in on this one? Charlotte?
Define temporary.
Sure. Temporary placement we've got as 120 days. So if you've got the mobile, that's the way that it's worded right now, is if it's there for 120 days and you're able to sell it quickly, you don't have to worry about the skirting. But if you were a mobile home dealership now and say you had it there, it was 121 days, on that 121st day, you'd legally at this time be required to be out there skirting it even if it was for sale.
And who polices that?
Our code enforcement would do that. There's not a lot of mobile home dealerships in the area at this time, but right now it's fairly easy to police because you can drive by and if the same one looks like it's been there for a while, you can notice that it doesn't have the skirting, and that's kind of how we've done it. There's been one that's been in violation that's being worked at this time, but other than that, it hasn't really been an issue that I'm aware of.
Do you want to move on this one way or the other, Ms. Farmer?
No, just had some questions.
Rodney?
I'll move that we accept it, the ordinance as written.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion, and we've got a second that we allow this exception that mobile homes and manufactured housing do not need to be skirted while they are for sale.
Correct.
Any other further council discussion on this?
Dwayne.
Mr. Silvas?
Jeff, the only places that are selling homes now, aren't they North Bryant somewhere, or?
There's one on North Bryant, which was one of the gentlemen that had come forward and asked about, what the status of this was. He's about to open up a dealership there as well. He'd been through the permitting process and had asked, that was one of his comments to staff, was if I really got to skirt all these, I'm trying to sell them. It seems like, kind of a waste of time for me. We said, well, at this time you're required to, but we're working on something that would fix that for you.
So there is, and that's the only one that we
And there's
know of.
another one, but they're in violation and haven't actually legally opened yet.
Okay.
Charlotte?
Well, I can already see a loophole when you say while they are for sale. If a person living and is not selling at a commercial business and you try to force them to put skirting on, they just slap a for sale sign in their window and they're not required to put the skirting on. That's just a loophole.
The
If it's
ordinance,
not prevented, if you can't prevent a private person.
the ordinance does have some terminology about this would only
Licensed
apply if it was at a
dealership.
licensed dealership. So if you lived in one, in a residential neighborhood where it's allowed and said, oh, I'm going to sell this and put it for sale, it still wouldn't be a licensed dealership.
Yeah, licensed dealerships and retailers. Any further discussion from council? Discussion from public? Motion has been made that we allow this exception. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on that one too, please, Ms. Ramirez. Discussion and possible action on matters related to the fiscal year 2013-214 budget to include stormwater fund, wastewater transfers, capital improvement projects, other items as needed. Morgan will be handling this. We did get into this some last meeting. I know we talked about wastewater.
The agenda, the caption before you today is all stuff for discussion today.
Okay, well, let's start with stormwater then.
Sure. There were some questions about the stormwater line item budget, so we've provided that to you in your background. I have some summary information we can touch on, or we can jump right to questions. It's whatever's the council's pleasure. Forgive me.
Council, you want discussion? You want to ask questions?
I'd like a discussion for
Yeah.
those who weren't on the council.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Let's have discussion, please, ma'am. Everybody else agree?
Sure. What we've got here before you is the budget that was just adopted on September 3rd, comparing the fiscal year 13 current budget to the fiscal year 14 adopted budget. The major revenue source in the stormwater fund is the stormwater fee. Last year's budget was just under 2.6 million, and adopted for fiscal year 14 is right at 2.6 million. And so that's been slightly up and down over the years since we have levied this fee, but right around that figure. So total revenue, almost 2.7 million. Under expenditures, you'll see the three major expense categories there are personnel, slight reduction there, at right at $1 million. Operations for the stormwater quality component and doing all of those functions of about $650,000, and capital expenditures for equipment replacement and acquisition and an equipment replacement fund of $1 million. So that brings us to, again, the $2,698,000 balanced budget for the stormwater fund. Here we have a graphical representation of the expenses by category. And so you'll see here that they're staying pretty much the same. The blue there is personnel. The green there is capital. When you compare fiscal year 12, that's actual expenditures. Fiscal year 13, that's the current budget. And fiscal year 14, that's the adopted budget. You'll see the only item really of note here is the fiscal year 12 capital was much less than fiscal year 13 budget. That's because actuals, we didn't actually spend as much capital. The fleet equipment was pretty new, and we are budgeting to keep that rotating on a cycle to keep all that equipment up and running so we can be functional and keep up to date with that state mandate. And here is a graphical representation of the revenue by source. Again, like I said, the main revenue source is the stormwater fee, and then other just the 3% of revenue. In another way to show expenditures by category, it's pretty well just chopped in thirds, a third for personnel, a third for capital, and just under a third for operations. And that's all I have for stormwater.
Discussion?
Yes, would you go through all three of those major categories and tell us where that money's being spent? Just the lumping of it together doesn't tell me much of anything. And also, I'm going to have a question. This council previously authorized an appraisal having to do with the Christian Village problem. And it's my understanding that this money, if the council elected to honor the appraisal or do something along those lines, or however modified, would be able to come out of this. And I want you to tell me if I understood that right, where that would be, which one of these categories.
Well, this may be a good time. Like I said, I provided in your background the line item detail. And so this is just summary information on the PowerPoint. I have the line item detail that we can pull up if we have specific questions about each of those account numbers.
Stuff that we were furnished was very faint and very small and almost impossible for me to read. So,
okay, it's difficult to put on the screen. That's why it's. I apologize. The background where you printed out should be easier to read, but. We can go through this line item detail. As far as the Christian Village issue, I think that was a policy decision. I don't know that has to do with the 2014 budget.
Let's just take them one at a time.
Okay. So in the line item detail, these are the revenue categories. Excuse me.
I'm more interested personally myself in the expenses, not the revenues. Somebody else may be interested in the revenues, but.
Okay.
Maybe Shane could help us.
Of course, one of our biggest one is the personnel accounts, and that's fairly self-explanatory between salaries and benefits and all that. Get into the operations function of it. That's when we start looking at the different, as far as the fuel, and if you want to go line item by line item, we can. But we actually, we break down fuel as a huge expense. This year we actually increased our system maintenance budget, and that's what we utilize. Those funds are actually utilized to go in there and fix the structures that are damaged or broke, or when we have extreme washouts and things like that where we have to go in and completely repair drainage ways and drainage ditches, items like that. Those are where the big expenses come in that. And then there's the smaller expenses within that where we have our professional services, which is our contract with the UCRA for the services that they provide. We also have the different trainings in the things that we have to have as far as being able to maintain our TDA licenses and things like that we have to have for spraying and herbicide applications, those type things in the expense account. The capital account is actually a little more complicated than just equipment. That is our equipment replacement program. That is equipment that we are still slowly purchasing over time, and then the rest of that capital funds is for any larger capital, like the Avenue P project, where we just dedicated those funds for the Avenue P project, dedicated funds for the Arroyo Trail project, dedicated funds for the Riverbank Stabilization Project. Sunset Lake dredging is a proposed future expenditure out of those fundings. Those type things are what the capital expenses are. If we need to get into further detail, we can. I do believe it is a stormwater component on the appraisal of that other property, so it's kind of a gray area, but we probably could utilize funds out of this account to pay for the appraisal. Like I said, it's a little gray in how that and how the direction was to utilize these funds as to appraising that, but I believe that those funds could be utilized for the appraisal.
Well, yeah, I'm not worried about the appraisal. I'm worried about paying for the cost of remediating this problem. And I understood it was out of this fund. I may have been mistaken about that, but I think this is something that needs to be clarified. Why would we go ahead and do an appraisal if we don't have the money somewhere to take care of the problem if the council elects to do so?
The funding, we would need to do research and a little more research into it from the state's point of view and the federal point of view, because some of their guidelines have started to change on the expenditures of the funds and the funding, and how you fund sources. If we as a city looked at purchasing that property and turning it into a stormwater retention basin, to where we actually could definitely tie in the purchase of that property and that facility into something that definitely improves the quality of the stormwater runoff in the area, definitely. But at that point, not only do you purchase the land, but at that point we would also have the expense of going in there and digging out, excavating, and actually creating a retention facility at that point. So, like I said, there's different ways to look at how you want to approach that land and that project.
Okay.
Any further comment, council?
I have
Wink.
a question.
Rodney?
He's
Winky.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not through. I'm sorry, Winky. I jumped ahead of you.
No, that's fine. Go
Okay,
ahead, Rodney.
I'm just trying to understand this, and I know that we had said that we were going to try to get the appraisal done, which I think we should get the appraisal done. But one thing it was my understanding that we're not saying that we're accepting blame for this yet, because there still is an argument on whether it's the city of San Angelo that is the one that's at fault of this, or if it's the state that's at fault of this because of the major highway that's going through there. So I want to make it real clear that, I thought that we didn't say we were going to buy that. Like, if the appraisal comes back at a certain amount, we don't know, and I think it's going to be a lot higher than what we're thinking it's going to be. That I don't think that we can afford to do that yet. I want to get this taken care of. I really want to help those people, but also, if it's not our responsibility, I don't think that we should be going for it. I think the good thing is to do the appraisal and kind of see where it's at, but we also need to move forward on trying to figure out exactly who's at fault of this. I think it's a combination of probably a couple of different people that are at fault at this, and not just us as a city.
Well, I understand, but the reason we're talking about it right now, Rodney, is we're discussing this budget, and if there's any money available out of that, I don't want it to be set said that we waive the right to any of these monies. They've got to be allocated in some sort of way. I understand that we haven't got the appraisal yet, and I understand we haven't decided what we're going to do. But the Storm and Floodwater Fund has come up in the budget process, and we're just trying to talk about all of this.
Right.
So I don't think you're disagreeing with me, but we will have some evidence here today to discuss whose responsibility it is to remediate this problem.
Okay.
Johnny?
To add to that, do you have evidence yet? I mean, are we jumping the gun, or?
No,
You have nothing to that.
I don't believe there's any evidence,
Yeah.
and of course, I'm not in the engineering
Right.
division side of things, but I don't believe that there's any specific evidence to say that this
And
city
I
is
agree with
at
Rodney
fault,
that, we need to step back, and if the appraisal was ordered, that's fine. I understand the problems that are out there at Kristen Village, but, it's a combination of Mother Nature and the state of Texas of how they built, that road, but I'm not ready to jump into it just yet, but I think we need to just kind of take it one step at a time. Having said that, my other question is, on the revenue side of it, what is that 98,000? There's an other 98,000. And my second question is, Morgan, when you said or Shane, when you're replacing all that equipment, what is all that equipment? What are we talking about?
The 95,000 and this year 98,000 is basically a repayment from the general fund for mowing of right-of-ways. Instead of actually having a mowing division in the street and bridge department, a mowing division in the stormwater division, and all that, we just wanted to have one division that really took care of the large area surface mowing, and so we have calculated how much right-of-way area that the stormwater mowing guys actually mow, and have calculated those costs, and those costs are actually, it's direct cost related from the general fund paying the stormwater fund to do their mowing for them. And that way we don't have to have two sets of tractors and two sets of shredders and all that stuff. We just have one department actually doing the shredding and the mowing. So that's where those funds come from. And then the equipment, we currently have the 5 street sweepers. We have 6 tractors and shredders, have a couple of smaller lawnmowers, pickups, dump trucks, wheel loaders, backhoe, those type of pieces of equipment.
Shane, how much are those street sweepers?
Street sweepers, I believe right now they're pushing 235 is 235,000 a piece. So on the street sweepers.
And the last question that I want to ask that was brought to my attention is, this was a federal mandate that we even start this fund back in 2010. How did we get from day one to even today, where even on the personnel side, 37% of that fund is for personnel? We didn't have this department, this fund, or the personnel, and then now, moving forward, how did we arrive at it? 37% of it is this fund for personnel. So
And we would like to actually, in Ms. Farmer's comments from the last meeting where we asked for a 3-year update, we would like to, in mid-November, maybe the second meeting in November, actually bring a comprehensive review of the stormwater program back to you. That will be when we've completed our annual report, just after we've completed this year's annual report, and would like to bring a comprehensive review of the program back to you. But just quickly, we started off with, we have the BMPs that the operations division is actually responsible, the stormwater division is responsible for.
Shane, what's a BMP?
Best management practice. We have 33 of those that we have to address within our program, and that's required by the permit that we submitted to the state. With that, we actually scaled up over time. We started with a base staff to take care of the basic functions as we started, and as we progressed in our as we came through the program, increasing it due to the responsibilities that we told the state we would start taking over time. The staff has increased over time to accommodate those needs. Now, of course, we have in recent times seen a tremendous amount of turnover, and that's why you saw the decrease in the actual personnel budget this year, is because we've had some 5, 6, 7, 10-year employees leave the city, and we've, replaced them with the starting salary instead of the higher salary that those folks had to work their ways up to.
And that's fine. If you're going to come back to us in November for a comprehensive plan or report, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Thank
Any
you.
further, counsel? Don?
I just had a couple of budget questions. You show $500,000 contribution to the Red Arroyo Trail.
Project, yes, sir.
What is that?
There-
And then along with that, you have improvement not building 500,000. Is that 500,000 the Red Arroyo contribution?
Yes, sir. How it's broken down on those sheets, it looks a little confusing. It looks like it's separated, but it's actually the same justification, just busted between two sheets. But it is the Red Arroyo Trail Project, which the Red Arroyo Trail Project it started off as a Texas Department of Transportation grant that we received through the MPO, or worked with the MPO to receive that grant to create. It's part of the Hackback Pedestrian Pathway Plan with the city to connect basically Sherwood Way to Knickerbocker. And through that, with the funding that we received from TxDOT, of course, there is a matching portion of the grant. But we wanted to take the opportunity with those funding sources and with this project to start creating some retention and sedimentation basins along the Red Arroyo, where we can divert some of that water from the arroyo and actually slow it down, have some of the suspended solids settle in those retention basins before it goes on downstream. And so that's why these funds were dedicated to that project, was to help create these retention basins and slow that stormwater down as it goes through.
Yeah, are these funds being matched by the state, or are they strictly?
I believe it was a 3.5 million.
About a 25-75 split, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think the
something
mayor's
like
right.
that. Yeah.
Either 25 local dollars or 20% local dollars, but
For the basins specifically, or for the whole?
No,
trail project?
for the whole project.
So can we pull out of that? Is it all lumped together, or is it divided out? And
It was all lumped together.
Okay, so we're not shouldering this ourselves?
No, not completely. It's actually part of the entire grant program.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the only reason we even got the grant, is for us, contributing our
part.
part. That's the
our
only
part
reason.
to it, and we took the like I said, and this does count towards our matching grant, but it also allows us to build the retention basins as well. So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
Charlotte?
It was my understanding that stormwater funds could be used to purchase property that had been damaged by stormwaters, and as far back as 1997, the city has admitted that stormwaters has contributed to this particular area, which causes flooding all the way to the arroyo on the numerous streets, Lindenwood and all of the College Hills, all of those streets down there. This is attributing to the floodwaters that come from that area off of the loop. And at that time, in 1997, the council at the time issued a letter to the Christian Village stating that it looked like federal funds and grants could be obtained as long as the city put up a 25% matching amount. Are you familiar with that?
no, ma'am, I'm not familiar with that. The funds that we actually have dedicated now in the stormwater fund or have been dedicated strictly to more the quality issue. Of course, I think the federal government and even the state government have started to realize that quantity issues are directly related to quality issues in a lot of instances. When you start seeing a lot of flooding and waters, getting out of a natural drainage way, you start looking at more erosion, more pollution, more pollution being washed into the streams. So I do believe that we are starting to see a mild shift in some of their policy changes, but that's just things that we would need to look into further. I will, remind council that back when we did start this program, that I believe that Mr. Bailey did present an option that would allow not only this function to happen from the quality standpoint of it, but also he proposed at the time adding an additional fee that would address the quantity issues at that time. And the council's pleasure at the time was to only address the federal and state mandates that were handed down to us and not address the quantity issues at the time. because, of course, we didn't want to have to initiate the fee in the first place, to deal with the unfunded mandate, but that's how you deal with unfunded mandates.
In my district, the people over at Parkview Lake are concerned about that lake over there, which is filled up, and it's used as a sedimentation holding pond, I believe, and it's now full. So it's not working. Is there any money? I know that's one of the projects that's on the list, along with Sunset and others, is possible city projects. Is there any possible money in the Storm and Floodwater Fund for Parkview Lake and doing some excavation in there?
I believe that staff has visited with the homeowners association that actually owns those two basins there, those two small basins. I believe that staff has visited with some of the homeowners there to visit about that very issue about actually dredging and cleaning those up. I'm not sure exactly how far along those talks have moved, and to what extent maybe sharing the cost or splitting the cost with the homeowners association. But the city is interested in that, because that is a lot of stormwater hits those ponds there.
I believe, it's my understanding, one of the two ponds has already been dredged, and the other one is needing to be dredged. And I guess I would ask the question, where could we find the money, if any, for that project, depending on the cost, of course?
Yes, that's what these capital monies are for. When we look at the capital side of this account, not only is that, like I said, the equipment, where we purchase our equipment and replace our equipment with, but that's where we get the funding to actually do the dredging projects, whether that be the Sunset Lake or the lakes at Parkview or any other retention area here in town.
Well, yeah, I understand, but is it your contention there's not any flexibility left in this $1 million for the capital improvement fund for this year that could be used for that if the council so prioritized?
Shane, let me just throw this in. I'd like to ask for a point of order that we don't expand other than outside what we're talking about is this budget only. And I may be wrong, but we can't elaborate on any other projects out there other than we're talking about your funding, your revenue, your income. That's all we can talk about, okay? And again, I may be wrong, but that's the way I'm understanding it.
Yes, sir.
That's the way I'd like to keep it.
In this funding cycle, we do have our capital monies, the $500,000 that we had. We have a portion of our capital monies, and of course, council, I guess, can direct us to alter our minds. But we do have to. The Arroyo project does have to be let by July of this year, so that funding has to be in place this year. There is a set aside that we have for our capital equipment replacement program in this year's funding. That could 200. I'd have to look at it specifically in that, but that would have to be redirected, or could be redirected in this year's budget. But
Shane,
I don't believe that would.
Mayor, may I ask?
Yes.
Shane, if it was council's preference to move ahead with that small dredging project, do you have any idea how long it would take? This may be an engineering question. Is that a permitted activity? Do you have any idea how long it would take if we need permits to get those and to get everything in order? Is that something realistically that can be done in this budget cycle, or realistically would that need to be, for project timing issues, be planned for the next year anyway?
With our current engineering, staffing right now, in our engineering department, I believe that it would take to get the dredging plans, to get it put together, to get all the permitting in place to move the dredge material from one location to the other. It probably would actually be into the next budget cycle before we could actually let that job.
If I could add, there are a ton of stormwater quality and quantity projects out there that have been identified, and we just touched on a couple of them today. I think in the next few months we plan on having a discussion about capital needs, capital funding resources that are available, and whether or not this issue is resolved today in one way or another, we need to talk about it again so we have a good idea of what the scope of those projects what that scope is for all of those projects that exist, and what the and how the small amount of funding that exists matches up with that. So I'm not sure that we need to resolve that project issue today, because we've got lots of projects out there that we need to talk about with council.
Well, I do have one last question, and that is, it looks like the Red Arroyo project is taking up about half the capital expenditures. Are there any allotted for next year also, or is this $500,000 going to essentially complete the project for the Red Arroyo?
This has been set aside to completely take care of the stormwaters portion of the Red Arroyo project. So at this point, next year's monies are not.
They're not
Council
obligated.
has not directed us to any specific project in next year's budget.
Okay, that was my question.
Y'all want to take a break?
No, keep going.
Are we through with this one then?
Mr. Mayor, I would say that the Christian Village people have an engineer here today to speak to this. If people want to hear the presentation, if we need to do it later, we can do it later.
I don't know that it's appropriate at this time to do that, because this is a budget item we're talking about. I don't know that it's and we haven't even got an appraisal on this yet, so I really don't see that it's appropriate to handle that at this time.
Mayor, it's also an issue of city liability also, so I highly recommend that if we do address that, we post it to the future executive session.
I think this ought to be brought back. I don't think we ought to deal with this today. Do I have any council consensus on this?
I agree with that, and it probably should be, Daniel's correct, it should be discussed in executive session, I think. Don't you think, Winky, beforehand, and we talk about how we can possibly help them?
Once we get the appraisal, it should be an executive session.
Well, we still got to decide, though, even if we get that appraisal and if it comes back low, we've got to figure out the responsibility, I think.
Right, I think we need to wait on this.
These people are ready and prepared to make that presentation
Okay.
at the time the council.
Well, maybe they
I don't have
can
a
make
problem
that,
with it.
after we get the appraisal, maybe they can do that in executive session to us then.
That's fine.
I
Okay.
totally agree.
I think that would be good.
I agree.
What does the rest of the council feel? I think we need to move on. I don't think we need to do
Move
this
on.
today.
Move on, Chief.
Do I have three consensus on this anywhere? Don?
Yeah. I agree.
I'm kind of torn, but yeah, I think we can move on as long as we don't drop the ball on this
Okay.
thing the way we have for the last 20 years.
I agree with you. We're dealing with it. We've already made plans to deal with it. Well, I agree. Charlotte says do it today. Johnny, what do you say?
No, I'll wait.
Marty?
Wait.
Okay, we'll deal with this at a later date when it's more appropriate. Do y'all want to take about a 5-minute break here, or do you want to continue? Let's take 5 minutes. It is 9:59. We're going to take about 5 minutes. That'll probably be back by 10:15. We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and move on. Silvus will be here in a minute. It's 10:11. We are back in session. We are moving to wastewater transfers. Ms. Morgan.
Good morning. We left this item on here in hopes that we would have something to present to you today, but we're still working through this city attorney's office on getting a resolution or an ordinance or some kind of law before y'all. So we don't really have anything formally presented for today, but just to let you know, we are working on something. We have a draft and we have an initial legal opinion. So we're moving forward on that, and we'll have it to you as soon as possible.
That's fine. Let's move on then. General capital projects.
You'll recall that in the general fund, we budget about $1,756,000 available for capital projects. And so those funds are, we've already allocated some of those funds, the $316,000 for Fairmount Cemetery improvements, $250,000 for the fire truck replacement, and that's a set aside. The fire truck actually costs more than that, but we set aside $250,000 every year. So that leaves a remainder of almost $1.2 million available for other capital projects. And I like things lined up, so if this speaks to you more clearly, we have this in a graphical representation showing that we have $1,190,000 to talk about allocating. We usually don't do this till later in the year, but since we were still talking about some budget follow-up items, we thought we'd put it before you today.
Also, reminder to everybody that there was some talk about sidewalks on 19th Street. And so we're holding that in mind, and we're not asking for complete allocation of this today. We think a more complete discussion of capital is appropriate, but we wanted you to know what's there, what's available.
And if you have any staff direction you want to give, so we can start working up some estimates as we get close on these dollars. For example, the Fairmount Cemetery, that's just 1/3 of the columbarium to be put out there. And that's just an excerpt from the Fairmount Cemetery presentation. So other eligible projects include street reconstruction, stormwater quantity, because recall we've had this historic pass down from the state that we could only use stormwater fee for stormwater quality. And so also Fort Concho rehabilitation, any kind of projects out there, 19th Street sidewalks and others. And so a complete list of projects are in the 2013 CIP, which was attached in your background. Again, not necessary for any action at this time, but if you have a pleasure of what you would like staff to start researching and putting dollars together for, that if all we have is $1,190,000, and then we say, well, we definitely want to do 19th Street, put pencil to paper and find out exactly what that is, then come back to us and see what else that'll put in. We can start putting together a package that'll fit in this budget for the 2014 year.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Staff has already started, because the 19th Street project is not just form it up and pour it, there's lots of right-of-way acquisitions. We've asked engineering to help us develop a timeline associated with that project, because we anticipate there'll be at least several months associated with negotiating the acquisition of the right-of-way in order to make that project happen. So there's a time element associated with that. And so I think from a staff perspective, we'd like you to direct us to set aside an amount of money that is not a direction to proceed, but is more of a budgetary placeholder for that project.
I think if I remember correctly from last week, the figures came in at approximately 125, 126, and that was a very basic figure. We are showing what, 1,190,000?
Correct.
If we just say, let's earmark 190 for this and take us down to about $1 million, that'll give us plenty of room to work on it.
Tim, do you recall? I don't recall the amount. I thought it was a little higher than that.
I thought for the south side it was 126, and for the north side it was about 250. That was my memory.
I was thinking it was like 400.
It was, I thought it was 130.
I believe it was about
That's total.
230,000.
Yeah.
For the north side, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then the south side was less.
Yes, it was. I apologize. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
130 or 150.
Yeah, I thought it was about 125, 130, somewhere along in there for south side.
Okay.
So if we pull 190 out and just earmark this to take care of the 19th Street project, this ought to give us enough, shouldn't it?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
and that gives us
Yeah.
clear direction, and the next time you see the chart, I mean, it'd be a reasonable expectation we'd have 19th Street sidewalks for 190 on that chart.
What-
I believe that number is $136,000.
I knew it was 100 and something like that. Don?
Well, one of the things also, I know we're looking at a 5-foot wide walk, but when we start through with these easements, I know some of those people, because of the width of 19th Street, may have problems with giving up that much of their front yard. If we hit a big snag and somebody has a lot of heartburn over it, let's look at making it just a little bit smaller, perhaps a 4-foot instead of a 5. But the bottom line is we definitely need a sidewalk there. And, if we can get a 5-foot, that's awesome. But, we need something there, and we need to really be pushing forward on that.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Now, what?
Yes, sir.
Can we go on with this? Or?
Yeah. Let's continue to discuss.
One of the things also, I don't want us to forget about our and it may be hot money and maybe a moot point, but our roof on our Coliseum, this 3 to 4 inch rain that we just had, the whole time it was raining, I was thinking, what's it doing to our structure in there and how much water is going through that thing. So, like I said, if we're going to use hot money for that, that's great, but I just don't want us to forget that.
So we've got, if we leave about $1 million in this capital improvement money, and then we have our hot money. And yes, that roof is a priority. We've already discussed that and agreed on that. Anyone else have anything as far as capital improvements they'd like to add to the list?
Well, actually, I do. Well, I don't want to bring it up this time. We're going to talk about it in the next meeting. I've got a couple items, but
Very well. Well,
it's
as
not-
long as we've got something to
it'll
work
be out
with,
there.
and they've got dollars to work with, then they can come up with a plan, and we can discuss it and dissect it and approve it or disapprove it. Johnny?
I know one thing I wanted to mention, and maybe in a different fund already, I don't know. On the this, I still call it the city park. You know, there's been folks that have been wanting restrooms out there instead of the porta-johns that we have there. So that's just, again, I think it's part of the river project funding that's there, money left over, but just wanted to throw that out there, that to get some, just real restrooms out there is what I've been approached with. So just want to throw that out there.
Well, I had a call yesterday from an individual that said we need to paint the South Side Recreation Center. So he says this hadn't been painted in 50 years. So, there's another items we can throw out, whether it be under our sports budget, or whether it be hot money, or whether it be capital improvements. But there's always going to be enough projects out there, I think, that we can spend the money we have. Anyone else care to comment on this? Do I have any comments from the public like to weigh in on this? Come forward, Brother C. We already talked about your sidewalk project.
That's it.
Introduce yourself, please, sir, and you have the floor.
Okay, good morning, council, mayor, staff. My name is Jerry C., and speaking of the sidewalk project, we would like to know if there's any decision made on what side. I think in general we agreed on the south side.
Yes, sir.
And if so, Sally, Ayana, and myself will go and canvass that and get and to get permission from those people on that side of the street. And we would probably like some assistance. I would deal with Michael, and probably like assistance with some of those lots that those people are out of town, not out of town, but absentee landlords and all of that. And maybe with Mike, if he has the time, we could possibly get that and try to step the project up a little bit. And,
appreciate your help on that, Jerry, and you and Sally can really help us out on this too.
Yes, sir. We'd like to get started on it as soon as possible. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, did you have something to say, Daniel?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this
Mayor?
capital improvement? Yes, sir.
For clarification on the 19th Street sidewalks, how far are we talking about? From Bryant all the way to?
What is it, 6 blocks? Jerry, is it 6 blocks? Are we in the sidewalk to go from Bryant to Brown?
Brian to Lily Street.
Brown to Lily. Isn't that about 6 blocks, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought. About 6 blocks on the south side. That way these kids, we'll be able to protect our kids that are walking and
Okay.
get them to the school zone safely.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I checked with Civic Events staff, and they said they have a meeting on Friday with an engineer who's going to help them understand whether or not they have structural issues at the Coliseum. And they said there is a hole that they're patching, or in the process of patching right now, but the big re-roof project is moving ahead with that discussion with an engineer on Friday.
Thank you, Michael. We're not going to let this one die, Don.
Good.
Do we have any further before we move on to the next one? Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is follow-up and administrative issues, announcement, and consideration of future agenda items. Do we have any agenda items from the council that needs to be added to the meetings?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask, item D, there is an item D on number 4. Do we want to move past that one?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I totally overlooked it. Other items as needed. Let's step back to item 4D, which is other items as needed. I'm sorry. I just completely overlooked it. Go ahead, Morgan.
No, that's fine. We just wanted the opportunity to speak to some of the questions that the council has had recently. One of the items we wanted to touch on was the cell phone freeze and increase. Just some background that we have a communications fund. It's an internal service fund. And so that is run by the IT department, the information technology department, and they administer all the communications for the city to get the best service and the best price and all of that. Divisions receive a better service at a lower rate by doing that. there was a question about a $63,000 increase to the cell phone budget. Cell phone is one of the activities offered by that communications fund. In the past, the police department had their own contract for air card service, which is what keeps the patrol officers plugged in out in the field. Instead, by being able to go with the communications contract on that has already been approved by council, we were able to get the police department a better service, better coverage, and at a cheaper price. So the police department is going to pay the communications fund instead of just paying a vendor directly. So what you see in the communications fund is an increase in expense, yes, but an increase in revenue as well. And so of the $63,000 increase to the cell phone budget, $51,000 of that is purely due to air card service for the police department. The other $11,000 is potential phone replacement due to damage, upgrades, accessories, and new phone service. Again, we're still at that cell phone freeze until we got this information to you, but that's we just didn't have that information readily available when the question was asked a couple weeks ago.
Okay, Councilor Rodney?
No, mine was going to be for the next item that we went to.
Is there any further council discussion on this item? Is this an action item, Morgan? Do we
No,
need
sir,
to-
but I have several items under item D. I apologize.
Mayor, on this item, if unless council has an issue, we're going to release that freeze. I have not allowed, because of the commitment I made that day I sat up here, I didn't know the answer, and I said we won't allow any new ones until we have this discussion with council. If council does not have an objection to this, I'll release that. There are a couple of air cards that the police have requested at this point, and we'll move forward with this amount as budgeted unless council directs us continue the freeze or do something different.
I don't have a problem with releasing the freeze. What does the rest of the council feel? Do you need a vote or you need a consensus?
No, just consensus.
Consensus?
No vote.
What do you think about it, Rodney?
I'm good with it.
Marty? Johnny? I'm good. Charlotte? Don? Winky? Go.
The next item under item D is the question about the workers' compensation fund safety incentive. We had talked about this, that council requested that it be removed from the safety incentive program. We asked could it be added to claims because this was only on a contingency that claims were down as projected, and we got that permission. And so we pointed that out when the budget was adopted, but just wanted to drive that point home that the safety incentive program has been discontinued. It's budgeted at zero. Those funds instead were added to claims as approved by council on the August 27th meeting and presented in the ordinance that was adopted by the budget on September 3rd.
And I think that's what council wanted. So I have any problem? Consensus of council, is that all right to leave it like it is?
Absolutely.
Don? Ms. Farmer? I'm okay with it. Johnny? Rodney? Marty?
Good.
So go on that one.
And the last item, we had questions about that it was still on our to-do list to bring back to you, the Convention and Visitors Bureau contract and the San Angelo Cultural Affairs Council contract to make sure that those hot allocations are done with council's approval. We brought those contracts to you this year. The Arts Council, the Cultural Affairs Council contract is up September 30th, 2014. The Convention and Visitors Bureau contract is up September 30th, 2015. And so those we will be having future discussions with you about hot allocations. It's still on our to-do list, but just to give you an idea of where those contracts are right now.
Yes, sir.
Further in the way of background, Mayor, some of our returning council members remember that the discussion that occurred had to do with getting the best value for the dollar. And so the discussion resulted in the objective to allocate not based on a ratio or a percentage, but to contract for a specific amount. And so we worked with the CVB and the chamber officials on that for that Convention and Visitors Bureau contract, and that is for a specific amount, and it is approximately $200,000 less than they received in the prior year. However, the main issue, other than the financial issue, the main issue had to do with the leadership at the Convention and Visitors Bureau being in touch with council's desires for service and for value. And so they proposed a quarterly meeting system where representatives from council would meet with CVB leadership, and so that that line of communication would remain open. We have not created that subcommittee on council or designated representatives to have those meetings, but the chamber representatives and Convention and Visitors Bureau representatives are interested in having those meetings. They are interested in knowing what council wants so that they can move in that direction or make sure that they're delivering to council what they want. And that is, I bring that up because that is a new part of the new contract that we have not really put into action yet. And the CVB folks are interested. Obviously, they don't want to be at odds with council.
Okay, we have contracts that are in effect until 14 and 15, so this is something that we can deal with.
We can deal with these issues at any time.
Okay. I'd say let's deal with them getting closer to the contract end so that we can go into the new contracts with different direction if that's what we choose.
That is certainly an option.
Rodney?
Oh, are you asking that we should send forward a representative, though, to these meetings?
I think so. The meetings
that's
have
what he
not
was
occurred.
asking.
I think they want to not be in trouble with council.
Right.
So they want to stay in touch with what council's desires are. And so I think they have been advocates for these meetings. And I think if council's satisfied, then we can relay that message to them and say they're satisfied and they're satisfied to the point they don't need meetings. But if you'd like to keep that line of communication open,
I think we'll just have a volunteer from Rodney Fleming.
I'll do it.
Okay, that'd be great.
We usually volunteer them when they're not here. Rodney, if you will, and council will approve it, then I would like to put you on that. And does this need to be brought back for approval?
We can have action on it.
Okay, bring that back and we'll formalize it. But if Rodney wants it, Rodney's got it.
You can take action today. The caption is worded in such a way to allow you to take
Okay,
action.
well, I'm going to move that we let Rodney Fleming be the city council representative to this committee to discuss these items. Anybody want to second it? Second. All right, I got a motion, I got a second. I have further discussion. Anybody else want to volunteer with him? Public comment. The motion has been made. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on that one, Ms. Ramirez.
Mayor, on
Yes,
the arts contract, that also needed to be renewed. When we began discussing with some of the stakeholders in the arts community, they were advocates for increasing their allocation. We were in the middle of a contentious election season at the time, and staff's recommendation was that we not seek additional funding at this time and turn it into an election issue. And so what we brought was status quo. That did not please all of the stakeholders, and they would like to see greater funding, but we think that that should be tied to back to the value discussion that was started with that last council. I think this council would continue that in that vein, that what is the best value. And so if we want to reopen those discussions, certainly that's a possibility. The other issue we face with regard to the arts group is the renovation of the auditorium. And those discussions have actually started between city staff and arts, SAPAC, San Angelo Performing Arts Coalition representatives for moving the renovation of the auditorium forward. And there are a whole host of issues that go with renovating the auditorium and operating it in that post-renovation era. And so that the status quo current contract situation may serve us well in the interim between now and that post-renovation time period, but certainly we'll pursue whatever avenue staff or council wants.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm not understanding you, Michael. I heard you say that because of the election, you prefer the status quo, but looking here at the budget proposal, it looks like it's almost double for the Arts Council. What did I miss?
Well, the method for allocation to the arts is 5% of occupancy tax. And the ordinance that allocates occupancy tax was changed last year and allows council to allocate for specific amounts or on whatever basis council feels appropriate. However, when we renewed the contract, we went with status quo. the status quo 5%. The difference in the amounts you see, I don't believe it's double. I think it's
Well, it's close.
Since the hotel occupancy tax revenue increased, the percentage given to the Arts Council increased as well. Since they get 5% of receipts, the revenue budget increased, and the expense budget increased.
I thought the
approximately. What were the old numbers and the new numbers, Morgan?
The fiscal year 13 hotel occupancy tax revenue was about 1.7 million, and I believe for the new year it is about 2.7 million.
So over half again as much. So that is based on that 5% number. And if council desires something different, certainly we can discuss that.
I would like for staff to bring back something. We may need to put them on a set amount. Are you saying they're complaining about this?
They were advocates for increased funding, at least to a few particular subrecipients. This actually this contract is with the with SACAC, San Angelo Cultural Affairs Council, and they subgrant this out, some to events, some to individual organizations, and some of those subgrantees were interested in a greater amount, and we thought that specifically I thought that those subgrantees introducing that topic would not be productive at that time.
I tend to agree with you. I'm glad you brought that up, Winky. Thank you, man. That's good. We need to work on that a little more, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously not understanding the whole thing because I clearly remember the prior council putting some people on a set amount.
Yes, we did.
Some organizations.
Yes.
But this was
obviously we didn't get this
another
one.
way. You stopped short of the goal line.
Quit before we were through.
Yeah.
Charlotte, did you have something, ma'am? Okay. I think staff needs to get with SAPAC and y'all talk this out and bring something back to us and let us make it, because this needs to be changed.
We can do that.
Say. Johnny.
I find it interesting that just because their revenue increases, it sounds like they automatically their expenses increase also. So that doesn't, set too well with me. So I totally agree with Winky.
I'm glad you brought that up, Winky. Yes, Charlotte.
It just doesn't seem right, but.
I just question the length of time that our auditorium has been closed. That's no revenue, for the city, no productions of any kind, and I'm anxious for it to get completed. Whatever pusher is necessary to get that back on schedule.
And I'll say amen to that too. That thing's been down way too long. Do we have any further comment, council? Public comment on this? Is this it, Morgan?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to where I started a while ago when I jumped ahead of us. Announcement and considerations of future agenda items. I know you had one, Rodney. Anyone else have anything? Rodney?
I have several.
Okay.
First, I'd like a presentation of the Red Arroyo Hike and Bike Trail. I'd like to see where we're at and a full plan of that brought forward to the council and let the public know where we're at and the amount of money that we spent on that. The next item I want to follow that item is a discussion and a presentation on Gun Club Road, the hiking or the jogging path, the road that goes around there. There's going to be a presentation. That's going to be by me and also the Lake Nazworthy Homeowners Association.
Would that be a good item to put on our nighttime meeting October 15?
It could be, yeah.
I know the next meeting it's going to have to be short because Daniel and I know we're leaving. So, and that
I want both of those things to be brought back together because I have a plan for this. I want to talk about both of those items together.
That might be an excellent thing to put on that nighttime meeting where we can have participation from the public.
I'd be fine with that because of the timing. My timing is I have time for sure. So if we could put that on the nighttime program, I'll bring this up again though because I want to bring it up on TV so that we will have more people coming to it. So next time I'll bring it up also.
Well, I know you had a meeting with the Nazworthy group. I suppose it was interesting.
Very, and it was a very good meeting actually. The last thing I want to just say it again, and I want it to be here for executive session. I want to bring up the Arroyo project, the main water project. And I want Chuck Brown and UCRA and those guys to be there, and I want to discussion of that. I don't want this to fall through the cracks. These main projects that are vital to us surviving, we need to keep working on them.
Is that it, sir?
That's it.
Anyone else have any future agenda items they need to bring forward? Let's go to the regular council meeting on October 15th, 2013. Will be at 5:30. Do we need to have an executive meeting before the 5:30 meeting in regards to time? I mean, we don't want to be here till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Is it necessary that we maybe meet at 4 o'clock as a council to have our executive meeting before? Is this a problem? I mean, a council discussion on this.
What time is our meeting starting?
5:30.
5:30.
I mean, if we go as normal, then we'll be breaking about 9:30 or 10 o'clock and going into executive and then coming back and concluding.
The 15th.
We can make a decision on this next meeting, though. Think about it, and if we need to have an early executive, then we can do so. Do I have anything else? Then I'm going to call for my favorite motion.
Move we adjourn.
Got a second? All in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. 10